We all long to live a courageous life of significance. We all want to be the example to our children and do big things that change the world. However, at the end of the day, the bills are calling, and the busyness of life often keeps us from stepping boldly into our dream and passion. Join Angie Taylor, a 30-year veteran educator and co-founder of Valor Global Online and Valor Global Foundation, if you long to leave a legacy for your family and leave your mark on the world. This show is for you. This is the Way of Valor.
Hey, welcome to the Way of Valor. I am your host, Angie Taylor. I'm very excited about our guest today. I think I met you in person a few years ago. I think we spoke at the same conference, Lauren, and then I kept hearing about you and kept seeing all of the resources. And then my husband and I have taken on your resources. So Lauren Vallotton, we are so excited that you are with us today. You have so many things going on. You're a busy mama. You run a company that has many branches of ministry involved in it. But at the end of the day, you are a wise, godly woman that I have found so much information and wealth from you that I'm excited to share you out with the Valor audience. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Angie. It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, so we're super excited. But Lauren, you have a unique story that is unusual to your standard. I grew up here, I just got married, and me and my husband did this. Like, you have a very unique story that I'd love to jump off with. Today, guys, we are going to talk about helpful tips for your marriage and your family. But I think it would be really beneficial to start with your story, Lauren, because I think that's incredibly helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, it's funny because when Jason and I got married in 2011, our story was very unique for our environment, our church environment, our community. And the longer we've been married, the less unique our story becomes. Mm-hmm. We find a lot more people with a similar story. But yes, so my husband and I were married in 2011. And when we got married, I became a stepmom to his 3 children from his first marriage. So he had been divorced for a number of years after just the end of his first marriage. And our kids at that point were 12, 9, and 6. And so I just kind of jumped right in as a 25-year-old woman who had never been married before and had never really envisioned a life in California, much less a life in California with my divorced husband and his 3 children. That was not the dream story for me, but it became our dream. And we spent all those growing up years kind of tag teaming with Jason's ex-wife and raising the kiddos, and they are all happy to report they are all grown and have left the house. And our oldest son is actually married to our beautiful daughter-in-law, Allie. And and then we've also got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So we're kind of we really like to do all the things at one time. That's kind of our brand.
You are definitely spread out. But what I love about it is I feel like you have a message for anyone. I feel like if you have a family, whether it is a blended family situation or you've been married to the same spouse, the reality is so much of what you guys offer through your marriage encounters as well as Braveco is so incredibly valuable. So let's jump off the ledge with your podcast. Talk to us about your podcast and what they can find there, because I think that's so valuable.
Oh, yeah. Gosh. So our podcast is called Dates, Mates, and Babies with the Vallottons. And we are we started this podcast 2 years ago, almost exactly. And this has been one of the most fun projects for us. Jason and I have a real passion for emotional and relational health. My husband's been a pastoral counselor for over 20 years and has worked we live in Redding, California, and Bethel Church is our home church. And Jay's worked there for over 20 years, kind of in different capacities, but largely as a pastoral counselor. He oversees our transformation center and which is our counseling center, and works a lot with men. Before that, had worked in our school of ministry. So his passion for emotional health and our combined passion for family and relational health kind of encouraged us to start our podcast a couple years ago. So we go after all kinds of topics within relational health, parenting, marriage, dating, emotional health in general. Just, we love it. And we have a really good time there. So yeah, people can find out all kinds of content for free over on the podcast.
Which what I really love about you guys is just your authenticity, your willingness to share the heart. And I'd love to know, what are kind of your top three? These are the things that a lot of marriages are missing, that they're not talking about, that they need to talk about. What would you say those are?
That's a great question. And I could go on and on about that. But
Yeah.
if I had to pick three, the first one that comes to mind is I think that married couples really struggle in the grind of life and parenting and all the stresses that come with just being a human being on planet Earth. I think that people have a hard time prioritizing their emotional connection over anything else.
Yeah.
We always say that is like critical. I mean, it's mission critical. To
Mm-hmm.
have a deep emotional connection with your spouse takes a lot of intentionality and
Yeah.
a lot of effort. And there's a lot of roadblocks to overcome to actually become a really emotionally connected couple.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, including personality differences and preference differences. And you've come from and been raised in different places, which creates a whole set of norms that are different from one another. So it can sound simple and straightforward, but actually becoming deeply emotionally connected is quite a journey, and it takes a lot of work. And I think that most married couples that we encounter, they just haven't been given the tools to
Yeah.
actually know how to practically build connection inside of your differences and inside of the stresses of life. So
Yeah.
we find that it's usually like a tool set issue, and
Good.
and with a little bit of tweaking the framework and
Mm-hmm.
adjusting those kind of barriers that I mentioned, the right tools can take couples a long way. Classically, you can Google this and find it, and
Mm-hmm.
it just proves true every time.
Yeah.
Communication is such a
Yeah.
massive one for most married couples. And, we always say, Jason and I always say, it isn't actually conflict that busts up connection in marriage. It's our behavior in conflict. It's
Oh, that's good.
our means of communication
Mm-hmm.
inside of conflict that either builds connection or just absolutely tears it down. And
So good.
communication tools, conflict resolution tools are some of the areas where people self-proclaim to be lacking the most in
Yeah.
marriage. And I guess if I had to pick a third, I do think that the area of sex in marriage can tend to be one of the least talked about
Yeah.
and most challenging areas of a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
because that's our area of deepest intimacy. So whether we have hurt from the past that we haven't quite gotten over, whether we have those communication issues that cause kind of a breakdown
Yeah.
in knowing what each other's needs are, um, I always say, like, your sex life in marriage is reflective of all of the other areas of your marriage. If
Yeah.
you struggle in
It's
communication, if you
good.
have unresolved conflict, if
Mm-hmm.
parenting is hard, all of those things are going to impact your sexual intimacy with your partner, which is
Mm-hmm.
meant to be our greatest place of safety and our deepest place of connection. But if those other areas of our marriage are off kilter or hurting, then we're really going to feel it in our intimacy life with our spouse.
Those all seem so good, but I think what happens is a lot of people listening to this may be thinking, but you're not married to my spouse,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you don't know my spouse. Like, that would be great if I had a husband that wanted to talk to me, or that would be great if my wife actually wanted to have sex with me. I think it would be easy to listen to everything you say and go, the bummer is I'm married to who I'm married to.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do you say to that person listening?
Totally. So, I think the beautiful thing about growing your marriage is that it actually doesn't start with your spouse. It starts with you.
Really good.
And so regardless of who you're married to, you get to work on you. And Jason and I always say, the day that you discover your issues is a good day, because that's actually the only issue you have control over fixing. We don't get to
Really
control our
good.
spouse or the choices our spouse makes. And I will say this, Jay in particular, because the counseling portion is really his forte. I work a lot less one-on-one with people, but he has for decades. And his absolute most devastatingly broken up marriages have repaired and have become brand new when both parties decide to take total ownership.
That's
But
good.
I'll say in an instance, I can think of one couple in particular where there was the first time this man had an affair was on his honeymoon with his wife,
Wow.
and they had been married for over 25 years when it came out that he had been unfaithful his entire marriage. And he was broken and he was repentant. But it's easy to feel broken and repentant when you get found out. It
Sure.
would be really easy to point fingers and be like, well, you have a lot of work to do, sir. What are you going to do about this? And Jason tells the story that the reason why their marriage is strong and thriving today is because in the midst of that situation, in that confession, in that brokenness, in her husband, she actually showed up to every meeting and asked my husband, what can I be doing? What can I be working
Wow.
on? How have
Wow.
I contributed to the culture in our marriage? And the truth is,
Wow.
whether your spouse is an absolute pain in the butt in certain areas
Mhm.
and uninterested in changing, there is a culture in your marriage that exists because there are two of you.
Mm.
And the people who are willing to get really humble and take loads of ownership over their lives
Yeah.
see miraculous things happen in their marriages because it really starts with us. And
Yeah.
if we could all call out the things about our spouses that drive us crazy or that bug
Sure.
us or that make growth challenging and hard,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's every one of us are in that category. But real growth and change is possible when we start asking that question about ourselves. What can I do? Because that's really the only thing we have
Yeah.
power over anyways.
And I think that's so important. And it's actually really freeing. I think, in fact, my husband and I were just having a conversation about something earlier. And, I was saying, yeah, babe, you're not that good at that. And I'm like, but that's okay, because let me tell you, here are the things I come to you for. I come
Yes.
to you because of your strength. I come to you because of your, I just started
Yeah.
going down and I think there's freedom when we are willing to really openly acknowledge the
Mhm.
truth of both our giftings as well as our weaknesses. And,
Yeah.
but yet we're still so loved.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Absolutely.
I love that. So you guys actually do a marriage encounter and you have one coming up, because I can think of no greater gift
Mhm.
for your kids, your children's children,
That's it.
and legacy and family generations to come than
Yeah.
getting your marriage on track. If you're a parent that
Yes.
your marriage is a mess and you're trying to overcompensate with the kids,
Yes.
you're not serving your kids.
That's
And
right.
so I can think of nothing better than this marriage encounter. So talk to us about that, what you guys are doing, and we can
Yes. I would
uh,
love to.
make sure people have information on that.
Yeah, I would love to. So this is perfect timing. We run our marriage intensive normally twice a year. Last year we did it 3 times. This year it'll probably be twice. It is a 6-week live marriage intensive course over Zoom.
Oh,
And
yay.
yeah, and it begins on February 10th.
Oh,
So
good.
it's coming up. Registration is open at jasonandlaurenvallotton.com. It's a six Monday evenings in a row. We've got live teaching. I'll tell you, the format of the course is we teach for about an hour. We do a lot of questions and answers. So the couples that are brave to come with their questions and their struggles really
Mm-hmm.
get like that live Q&A tends
Mm-hmm.
to be some people's favorite portion. And then we have got activations and things for each couple to work on to kind of digest that week's material
Yeah.
throughout the course of the week. And we're kind of in touch and touching base and all of that. So it's a 6 week long commitment. Um, This is kind of, we say it's we call it an intensive because it's a bit intense. It's a lot to think
Mhm.
about and a lot to learn in 6 weeks time, but what it's really meant to be a catalyst for growth in your marriage. So
Mhm.
we actually we have you take a pretty in-depth marriage assessment before the course begins,
Mhm.
so that you come in with kind of eyes wide open on paper. What are you saying about your marriage dynamic right now? And what are the
Mhm.
things that you could really benefit from growing in and investing in? And then Jason and I, and our teaching style is just very practical, lots of practical tools, but we like to tell people we're not really interested in helping people rebuild a marriage. We're interested in helping people build a new marriage if they're
Mhm.
in trouble.
Mhm.
Um, sometimes a big framework change and the process of making amends and walking through forgiveness and actually building a solid foundation where the culture of your marriage is strong and you
Mhm.
have vision together for what you're building. We love coming
Mhm.
alongside couples, but this course is actually, we always say, if we could get people to take this marriage intensive in their first 2 years of marriage instead of
Mhm.
their 25th year of marriage,
It's
it
good.
would be our dream come true, right? So we actually designed it to be really relevant for couples that have been married a very little amount of time or couples who have been married a long time. Ultimately, we all want the culture of the kingdom in our marriage, whether
Mhm.
you've been married a
Mhm.
little bit or a long time. So yeah, I would say if gosh, we would love to have you. If 2025 is like, you know what, the best investment we could make is in the health
Yeah.
of our marriage for the sake of, like you said, Angie,
Mhm.
your children
Mhm.
and your family. I mean, gosh, we would love to run alongside you. This is one of our favorite things that we do. We probably won't run the live one again until fall.
Okay. We will definitely put information on how they can get
Oh, great.
information on that in
Great.
our show notes. So if you're interested in that, is now, would you say only people that are struggling in their marriage? I have two questions. Who should
Mm,
take it? And
yes.
then the second question is what if you have a spouse, but there's other person won't come? Is it open to somebody, like, would it benefit somebody to come on their own and get tools?
That's a good question. We haven't had that dynamic before. Typically, you know, I answer the first part first. So kind of as I mentioned, whether you've been married a little bit or a long time, whether your marriage, you feel like really healthy and strong in your marriage, or whether you feel like, wow, we're kind of on the brink of divorce. Honestly, we have found that people all along that
Mm-hmm.
spectrum have found it helpful because we're teaching the same cultural foundations for
Mm-hmm.
marriage, whether you're struggling or not struggling. I will
Yeah.
say that um, that the how you apply kind of what we're
Yeah.
teaching you is gonna be affected by kind of the state of your marriage
Sure.
health wise. But we love when couples who are thriving and just want to actually come alongside other couples that are really caring about investing in their marriages. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of beauty in the community aspect of like, we're committed for 6 weeks to something alongside other kingdom minded people who want to invest in their families and marriages. There's a lot of fruit there. And then ultimately, I haven't met any. In the marriage assessment, you'll kind of see whether you're in the category of having a lot of growth areas or a lot of strengths. And
Mm-hmm.
even in strong marriages, right? Strong
Yeah.
marriages
Yeah.
still, we always are growing. Jason and I are
Yes.
always growing. We're always getting
Mm-hmm.
coaching in our marriage. That is,
Mm-hmm.
how we're doing differs week to week, circumstance to
You're
circumstance,
right.
and there's so much room for growth inside of our
Yeah.
marriage. We want to go from glory to glory in our marriage
Yes.
connection. And so
Mm-hmm.
we actually just don't subscribe to the thought that like anybody is exempt from
Mm-hmm.
needing more and more health in their marriage connection. So yeah, we've designed it to be helpful for people who would find themselves on any part of that spectrum.
I
Um,
love that.
if your spouse is not interested, then I think the way that it's designed is a lot of the activation, the midweek stuff is designed for you and your spouse to really
Mm-hmm.
come together over the assignments and connect and communicate and
Mm-hmm.
break things down and build things up. So um, if your spouse is refusing, Uh,
Yeah.
One thing that we love offering is we offer like a free 10-minute phone call if
Oh, I
you're
love that.
interested in the marriage intensive, but you don't know if it's for you for right now.
Hmm.
Obviously, those things can vary circumstance by circumstance. And we love kind of having that phone call with anybody interested to kind of discover if it feels like the right fit for
Hmm.
you. So I would say reach out to us if you're not sure if it would work or if your spouse isn't very
Yeah.
interested. Maybe hop on a phone call with us and we can talk through your dynamic and
Yeah.
help you decide whether it's the right fit.
Oh, I love that. That's excellent. I think so often, and I know this has been true in my life. We run hard in our businesses and building companies and building things outside of our home. But the thing that I've discovered is if my home is not the sanctuary and the sacred place, I fall apart. Everything outside of it, every stressor outside of my home, all of a sudden becomes exponentially harder.
No
And
doubt.
I think when we look at priorities and I can't stress this enough that, you may be rocking it in business, but if you're losing at home,
Oh, yeah.
um, you're actually, you are less productive in your business as well.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
And I think people miss that because that if things aren't great at home, boy, everything is hard. But
I
when
know.
things are strong at home, even the stressors outside of my house
Yeah.
are not quite as difficult. Now, you guys do something that I know my husband has participated in, and I just am so excited about it because I think in this world, I think it's more likely that as females, we're leaning into these places of vulnerability, getting coaching, learning in this space. It's a little less safe
Mhm.
for men, but you guys do Brave Co. and truly some of the coolest dude stuff that my husband has been hooked into, but his life has been changed as a result. And so talk to us about Brave Co.
Yeah. My husband started Brave Co. in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, kind of discovering, uh, the need of men for connection
Yeah.
in the midst of their world kind of falling apart was just re-highlighted to him. So he started it in 2020, and um, the vision of Brave Co. really is to equip and empower men in their greatest area of calling. And
Mm-hmm.
this, as we know, is in the kingdom, it's done through it's done through relationship. And so, the short version is that it's a men's discipleship program.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, I feel like what they're building is more of a brotherhood.
Yeah.
Um, and we have seen men who are completely separated from themselves and their families
Mm-hmm.
in a lifetime of brokenness and
Yeah.
disconnection come into health and freedom through not just the curriculum that's available, but truly through the relationships that they develop. And the way that Jason and the team are discipling men is radically transforming, I think,
Mm-hmm.
the landscape of, like, honestly, manhood in
Yeah.
general,
Yeah.
in the church especially. And it's funny because you said it just a bit ago that, if your home life is a mess,
Mm-hmm.
then you only feel so successful at work or in any other part of
Mm-hmm.
life. And one of the things that we have been seeing, which is actually just really cool to me, is, and I would be curious if you would have seen this too, Angie, but I feel like Jason has said lately that amongst men in this generation, and when I say generation, I mean men alive today,
Yeah.
regardless of age, um, the big flex is becoming, how healthy is my family?
I love that so
Whereas in
much.
past
Yeah.
generations, that was not the flex. The flex
Yeah.
was, how much money am I making?
Yep.
And where is my business going? And
Yes.
does my boss think that I'm a big deal?
Yes.
And amongst men, we're seeing a shift. And
That's true.
I think that we are alive in a time where
Yeah.
we actually want what is authentic and
Mm-hmm.
real, especially in we're seeing this a lot, right? In the younger
Mm-hmm.
generation, they want authenticity. They want to know
Yeah.
the real story. They don't want any BS. And
That's very true.
and amongst men, there's a flex that's like, yeah, I work so that I can be home with my family.
Mm.
I do what I do so that my
Yeah.
wife and I are connected. I do what I do so that my children and I have a healthy, strong relationship. And there's a bit of a turning tide
Yeah.
where I think that through the work of Braveco and other
Yes.
movements like it, there's a real high value right now for family connection and thriving on an emotional level. And men are tired of
Yeah.
having to fake it.
Yeah.
Men want authentic relationships like women want authentic
Mhm.
relationships. They may or may not have been like culturally trained in how to
Mhm.
achieve those kinds of deep connections the way that it's been more normalized for women to have those intimate relationships with friends and community, but men are as hungry for it, if not hungrier and more lonely than women.
Mhm.
And so there's a beautiful thing happening amongst
Yeah.
men in this hour.
Yeah.
And, part of the vision of Braveco is to absolutely bring solution to the fact that we are living in the most fatherless generation
Yeah.
alive, ever
Yeah.
alive on planet Earth. And not
Mhm.
because our dads are off at war, but because our dads don't want to be at home. So we've got like
Yeah.
50% of families are single parent families without a dad present in the home right
Wow.
now. And that is a cultural phenomenon. And I think,
Mhm.
we're seeing men rise up and go, yeah,
Yep.
we're not interested in whatever created that storm in our nation. Like we're
Mhm.
not interested in
Mhm.
perpetuating that. And I think I
Mhm.
just have so much respect and
Yeah.
hope inside, so much respect for men that are making choices to actually prioritize health and home
Yeah.
over other things. And I think we're seeing it happen, and it's been beautiful to watch.
It is so beautiful. In fact, we had a unique experience here with you guys uh, a couple months back, and something that was we were all attending the same event in a different city.
Yes.
And what was hilarious about this moment was the we were all the wives standing in a circle, none of us really knowing each other,
Mhm.
and somebody started sharing who their husband is. And all the wives started laughing and said, "That's your husband?" Because all of our husbands had come home from
Yes.
being together and had the same story that they enjoyed, that they were challenged by, that they were inspired by, and had told their wives. And there was just this moment of, it was probably unique in my life where it was the husbands that had come together first. But
Totally.
as women, we were bonded because of the
Yes.
brotherhood of men. And there was
Yes.
something that was, I think, more powerful
Mm.
than had it just been the women. So I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's answering a cry of our heart as women, because the feminist movement has damaged so much of men in society with the idea that we don't need a man.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's just so, I mean, it's really from the pit of hell, because as a strong woman who leads a company, I can tell you I desperately need my husband
Oh yeah.
in a million ways. And you can be a confident, strong woman, but understand the gifts and value of men, of
Absolutely.
what they bring. So
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
anyway, so tell us here's somebody just listened to this podcast. They're like, I love everything you're talking about. My family's a mess.
Mm-hmm.
What's what's the first steps they take as we wrap things up? What's your hope and your encouragement for them if they're like, I love everything you're saying, I don't have that?
Yeah, I don't know what to do. Well, we are in the business of helping people figure out what to do
Yeah,
about that. So
that's
reach
awesome.
out. We'd love to hear from you. Our podcast, even if you just search topically through our podcast, I think, most people know, um, it, you could tell me right now, if I asked anybody listening, what are the things that are going great and what are the things that are not going great? You know
Yeah,
them. The truth is that nobody likes being in an uncomfortable season or a season where you
right,
feel like things are out of control. And the truth is that if we knew how to fix the
yeah,
problem, we would have already done it, right? We
true,
would have already done it. So
very.
The greatest resource that Jason and I have found in our family and in our marriage is the resource of people who are
Mhm.
great at this stuff. So
That's good.
we subscribe to the thought that everybody benefits from coaching and counseling
Yeah.
and help.
Yeah.
When we run up on areas where we don't know what to do, we are
Mhm.
quick to reach out. And so I would just say, if you're listening and you feel like, man, we have lived inside of this cycle pattern for
Yeah.
way too long. If we would have known what to do, we would have done it. We
That's
need some
true.
help. Well, then reach out. We'd love to hear
That's
from you
good.
and see if we could help you walk through this next
Mhm.
leg of your journey, especially if it pertains to the health of your marriage first. I
Yeah.
think we've got some great resources for you. Um,
That's good.
and yeah, my hope and my encouragement to you would just be that, in some regards, a new year is just another day, right? Like a new
Mhm.
year doesn't
Mhm.
magically make things change or go away or different, but there is a grace-filled moment. I
Yeah.
think as people, we love, God created us to enjoy rhythms,
Yeah.
and part of our, globally, part of our rhythm is that January begins a new year. And there is a grace, I think, to access um, change. There's a grace for change. There's a grace
Mm.
for learning and for setting new standards
Yep.
and repairing things that need attention. I think there's a real grace for that in this time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would
Yeah.
bless you with that
Yeah.
grace and absolutely
That's good.
say, like, hey, we're here to encourage you to go after it. There's nothing you can't do when you take ownership. There really isn't.
Yeah.
God designed us to, in
It's
partnership
really
with Him,
good.
when we're humble and take ownership. He designed us to be overcomers. And
Yeah.
so there's nothing that you cannot overcome. And we
Yeah.
we love to stand with you in that.
Yeah, that's so good. I think the thing that so many people embrace is this idea that nobody's quite as jacked up as me. Nobody's
Oh,
quite as messed up or failed as bad as our marriage, or, or
yeah.
we like to
Yeah.
blame the other spouse. And the reality is any marriage, I've been married for 32, 33 years. I got to ask my husband. I never remember, but any marriage that is worth its salt, any marriage that is strong has gone through coaching, has gone through seasons of pain and cycles that, the only failure is giving up. Like
Yeah.
that, at the end of the day, fight for you, fight for your family.
Yeah. No doubt. Might sound a little bit harsh, but honestly, when people tell us like you don't understand their, we're way too far gone.
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
think it's quite arrogant when we consider our
Mm,
issues to be so big that they're beyond the reach of help or
good.
coaching. I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Nobody actually has a very unique problem. That's what we've discovered. And there's a
Isn't that
lot
true?
of, I would like to disempower the enemy in our lives by coming
Good.
against the lie that says my problem is too big to be helped. I'm like,
Yep.
you're not actually that unique. You're not actually
That's true.
that unique that your problem is so beyond help. Now, our willingness to take ownership and make change that is difficult
Correct. Yeah.
is what keeps us from growing.
That's good.
But that's a you thing. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a we got
And
to
that's
take
fixable, right? That's, you
radical
can fix
ownership.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It
That's so
absolutely
good.
is.
That's it. Well, Lauren, this has been really fun. I'm going to make sure I put all of your resources in our show notes. You guys,
Great.
this marriage, let's see, you don't call it intensive.
Yeah,
Thank
or
you. I
marriage
want to
intensive.
make sure I
Yeah,
put the right
it's
word with it. Marriage intensive. I cannot strongly recommend this
mm,
enough. And really this is going to be the easiest inroad to marriage coaching because you get to do it from your couch.
yes,
So absolutely recommend you
yes,
invest in your marriage. I don't think there's anything better that you could do for your family or your business, actually.
yeah,
So, Lauren, thanks for joining us today and
of
thanks for
course.
listening.
Yeah, you know what? Can I just
Oh,
mention one more
yes,
thing quickly?
please. Yeah,
I just felt this in my heart. I'm going to
good.
send a discount code to you, Angie, that you
Oh,
can put
good.
in your show notes. Anybody that would like to
Good.
join our marriage intensive from the Valor community, we'd love to just offer a 10% discount.
Awesome.
So I'll send that to you, Angie. You can include it in your show
Awesome.
notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of
Thank you so
course.
much. Hey
Thanks for
guys, thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and give us a 5-star review. Guys, there are people that their lives are getting on track and change because they're hearing the message of hope. We thank you for your participation with us. Have a great day.